From Tally to Cali,
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up! Wake up! Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
and this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi.
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! What's up, everybody? It's Wake Up Warchant, proudly presented by Zaxby's Indescribably Good, but if I may try to describe it, Drew Singletary, a.k.a. at Mr. Clutch _1992, lamented, Corey, that there's no Florida game this year. Bummer. But hey, the sensation is back. And he has a nice photo of it. The sensation salad, as well as a piece of Texas toast and 2 egg rolls. Drew must be a must be a big shot caller around his neck of the woods again. 2 egg rolls.
2 egg rolls. He's spending. Good for him.
Looks so crisp and refreshing on these hot summer days. The office here at Midtown offices, Corey, I don't use it for anything other than work. So when I'm not in here, because the house is old and the insulation is almost non-existent, I close the air conditioning vent in this room. I also, for some reason, left the shades open because I was like, I'm going to clean the house. Let me just get everything nice and bright so we can get motivated. That didn't work. I came in here to record the podcast, and I almost got knocked out. It was so hot in here, it was almost noxious. I can't even describe it, but I just tried to.
Yeah, you can't describe anything. You can't describe Zaxby's. Yeah. You can't describe the heat in your home.
Oppressive.
It is. I'm sure that's a very good word for it. It's not all that cool up in Atlanta either these days.
You know it's not going to be all that cool?
What's that?
Trying to play football with these face shields on that you invented.
Come on. I think that'll be perfectly cool. There's got to be some kind of air filter that gets those things through the ear hole. You're not fogging up. I
can't even, this is just how pea-brain I am. I still can't even conceptualize it, even though there's an actual tangible photo out there. I know what a hat visor looks like, obviously, but I still don't understand. I'm looking at the thing that LSU posted over the weekend, or maybe they posted on Friday, that sent the Twitter sphere into a tizzy. But the bottom part of it, I mean, it's clear, but there's vents, there's not vents. You've seen this thing, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't even touch the bottom.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in front of me. I would like to see it and hold it and feel it and get to know it and actually see how it's all going to work and what it looks like. But,
it's your prototype. You didn't get approval on the prototype before it went to press?
No, I think they actually beat me to it. I got an email into the patent office to make sure that I'm still covered, but they have not responded so far. But obviously, I mentioned it on a podcast probably 6 or 8 weeks ago at this point. Yeah. So I feel like that's good enough.
So the bottom portion, this looks like it's a one solid piece mask, but sort of what protects your jaw and your mouth of the actual face mask, the plastic plexiglass doesn't even touch the face mask. There's probably it looks like maybe a 1/4-inch gap between the plexiglass mask and the actual face mask, where you would get grabbed for a 15-yard penalty. So that thing is on your face. When I played hockey, Corey, you had to wear a full face shield. So you either wore a cage. They also had sort of hybrids where the top half over your eyes was a clear shield so you could have better vision, and then the bottom was kind of like a cage, like a face mask. Because just had to be the bougie guy that I am, I bought a full plexiglass face shield. So I look like a NASA astronaut out there. Dude, that thing was so freaking hot. And it had cutouts much larger than what this has. And man, I spent $100 on it. So my dad was like, suck it up. You're going to keep wearing it. But I think after the third game of a weekend, I'm like, dude, I can't do this anymore. So I went back to the hybrid where I had a clear shield up top and then metal grate on the bottom so I could breathe.
Maybe they've made some advances in helmet technology in the last. That was probably 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, man.
So let's hope they've made some Rydell or whoever has made some advancements in that kind of stuff. But it's good to see that they've come up with something. We'll see how many teams use it. If LSU's even going to use it, I assume they would. But let's hope that all schools are going to have something like that. If not, go back to just, hey, you're going to have to wear a mask for 12 plays in a row. Go to the sideline, stand 6 feet apart, and take it off when the drive is over.
It's a well-intentioned device. So I'm not going to be on brand and hate on it. But it just I don't think it's going to be a very practical.
But also, man, I was thinking about this though. You know how when there's a fumble, there's a pile and there's 6 guys on it, and usually it's a Florida Gator, but it's somebody that's trying to like grab testicles or bite or punch.
Yeah.
Do you think in the COVID era did they start coughing on people at the bottom of a pile, or spitting on them?
Oh gosh, I hope not. I mean, I like the sentiment, kind of like let's play dirty, but probably not to that extent.
Well, I mean, I'm not a big testicle grabber guy either. I'm not pro testicle grabbing, but there's stuff that happens in a pile, and you wonder if there's there's always a couple of those dudes on every team, not just football, just teams in general, that take it way too seriously, that are too ego driven, and that really physically want to hurt other people. And maybe there's a chance. I wouldn't put it past somebody to just snot on someone intentionally and say, "Oh man, I haven't been feeling too good either, so you might want to get tested right at." I don't know. I wouldn't put it past people to start coughing.
Like, take that back home. Take that back home with your girl. Let her know what she thinks about that. Enjoy that one. 64. Enjoy it.
Just straight up, like, I guess if you're an offensive lineman, you could do the same thing. Like, if you beat me again for a sack, I promise you I'm going to cough all over you. I promise you. So you might want to think twice about it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff to figure out when it comes to the gamesmanship of this. And, when it comes to that the mask and the helmet and everything, again, I don't foresee transmission on a football field being nearly as problematic. Are they going to wear these helmets at the frat parties?
Well, Corey, you keep saying this, but the thing is, I mean, if they're going to test once, actually, I'm not even going to get into the continue. I'm not even going to get into it. I'm not even going to get into it. So I just don't foresee the transmission on a football field being the biggest issue. You're crazy.
I just don't, and I don't think I don't even know how you could prove it if somebody got it from another player on a football field, but it's going to have to be behavior changed off the football field, which is going to be the biggest issue. If and you see all the stuff that's happening in the Pac-12 right now, there's some big hills to climb still for this football season to be a reality, I think. But I mean, they're trying to climb them, which is good. I'm not talking about the kids in the Pac-12 necessarily. I don't even know if you want to talk about that, but just that college football is trying their best to get this season done.
If North Carolina's nose guard comes into Tallahassee and he has it, and they tested him on Wednesday, he was negative, and he has it, and he plays 87 snaps, how many Florida State offensive linemen do you think are going to get it? Over, under, I'll set it at 1.5.
I would say under.
Okay. So I gave you an easy way out. Way out.
I would say, especially if they're, if you're not
blocking them.
If you're, yeah, you got to get close enough to them to block them. You actually got to get pads on them and be physical with them. So, I would. I mean, we'll see. Again, there hasn't been any football played at all.
Right.
So maybe this will save the sport. Maybe legitimately it will save the sport, and it'll make players at least feel safer on the football field. Again, that's 6% of the actual issue in having a college football season is the practices and the games. The other 94% is making sure an outbreak doesn't happen because of what you do away from the team.
Well, we're seeing that in MLB, right? A lot of this was, I think with the Marlins, it was they were quite lax on protocols. Yeah. They were hanging out in the hotel bar, which, like, who's hanging out in a hotel bar at this day and age? Like, I don't know. I'm a nerd. I'd be in my room.
Yeah, that's right. I hang out at hotel bars. Don't judge me.
I love hotel bars, but I mean, it's a little bit interesting time we're living in, and it's getting a little bit more interesting every passing day. We should talk about probably what's going on over in the Pac-12. I'm going to hope and lean on the fact that Brady Clark's not winning championships this past weekend, and maybe you had the ability to read up on what's going on out west, where apparently players are making a pretty organized effort to get some concessions to help, ease some of the concern of playing, but also some bigger picture things.
Yeah, the thing that I thought was the best one that they had in their I don't know what you'd call it, their negotiation. I don't even know what you'd call it at this point. For the people that don't know, I think it's around 400 I know it started as like Cal football players group text, and then they had friends on other teams, and they joined the group text, and then the group text became like 400 players. Jeez. So, that's a ton of players. I don't even know what that would be. Pac12, I can't do the math. 35 players a team on this group text, and they came up with an idea of they want to make sure they feel safe to play, and they're going to boycott the season if they don't, or opt out. Maybe boycott is not the right word. Opt out of the season, which you can understand. I mean, I know we can roll our eyes at what's happening with college athletes, especially football, in the last 3 or 4 months when it comes to NILs and now this. But, it's the one sport where, they're the one, like, again, Lewis Williams and Chris Paul and LeBron James, they're theoretically, technically risking their, I don't know, they're not risking their lives necessarily, but they're risking their health to go play and to go entertain. Well, they also get paid a ton of money to do it. These guys, not so much. So it's just different. Meanwhile, Mike Norvell gets paid a lot. Willie Taggart gets paid a lot. Dabo gets paid a ton. So it's the inequity is real and it's there. The problem is, what do they want? Because I know in the initial offering, again, I don't know how you'd phrase it if it's a negotiation or not, they want half of the revenue to go to the players.
Which sounds a lot, but I think NFL is the only professional, well, obviously Major League Baseball, because they're not salary capped, although that probably doesn't have to deal with it, but NHL and NBA do. And actually, NHL, I think the players get 57%. NBA does a 50-50 split. I think NFL players get 48% of the revenue. But what they asked for in the letter here, just real quickly, were safety precautions, medical insurance for 6 years after their eligibility ends.
Absolutely. I'm 100% on board with that.
I agree. A permanent civic engagement task force to address social injustice issues, and for the league, as Corey mentioned, to distribute 50% of each sport's total conference revenue evenly among athletes in their respective sports. So that's pretty specific. So tennis ain't getting football money in that case.
Tennis isn't getting a dime. And the problem is tennis is going to start losing scholarships. And that's the issue where there's no chance that's happening. There just can't. That would completely – and whether you agree with the college athletics model, and it's – when you actually step back and look at it, it's pretty ridiculous because it used to make sense. Like in the 60s and 70s, Bear Bryant wasn't making $2.9 million.
Right.
He was making more than a high school football coach, but he wasn't a gazillionaire. I don't know what the most he ever made in a season was. I bet it was a couple $100,000 maybe. So like the equivalent of like a good Georgia high school football coach probably makes over 120,000.
He made $450 his last season. So
which was 81. So when they were winning championships and when he was building that program, now I know we got to account for inflation and everything else that's changed in the last 50 years. It's probably the equivalent of $1 million back then, but he wasn't making insane amounts of money. Right. Neither was Bobby Bowden for the first 15 years he was at Florida State. Then the money took off, and now again, it is incredible that these guys get paid more than NFL head coaches. Many of them get paid more than NFL head coaches, and they don't have to pay any players. So there's a huge gap, and it's ever widening because the TV money just took off, and it was a huge boon. And college football has the exact same model that it had back when Bear Bryant was making $180,000 winning championships in the early 70s. So it's going to change. This is expediting it, maybe exponentially. It might change by 2022. There might be a completely different model. For all we know, the Power 5 is breaking away from the NCAA. We don't know about that. So there is inequity here. But what's going to happen if these demands are met and you say, okay, sure, we'll give all the players 50% of the revenue, but now there are 6 total sports on this campus that give scholarships. Because we simply can't afford to pay for any other scholarships. You can't do it.
Will your scholarship be paid for? Or if you get 50% of the revenues, like you pay for everything out of pocket then?
I don't think I think it's still scholarship money. I don't think they're doing – maybe they would do that, I guess. I mean, I guess that's an option. Either way, if you're cutting the revenue of an athletic department in half, like think about Florida State in 2020, the revenue they're already losing.
Yeah.
And then you say that they go, they were going to make $50 million in revenue, and now they're making only 25. Sorry, man. Sorry, tennis coaches. Sorry, golf coaches. Sorry, half the administration. And they've spent like drunken sailors for years, all these athletic departments. So there is a reckoning coming.
Right.
But I think that's something that just can't be done.
You've been talking about this for a long time, Corey. The bubble, man. The bubble's going to burst.
It's absolutely bursting, and college football players are the reason. They are seeing it because there is a reckoning here. When you read on Twitter, and not even Twitter doesn't even really have anything to do with it. You start to realize, wow, we're a pretty substantial part of this engine that drives this university, that makes this university money. We are the engine of the athletic department, and if we shut down and decide not to play, well, boy, it completely crumbles. And now we've never been faced with that before. There's never been a threat of not having a college football season. I guess since World War II, when black players weren't allowed to play in most of the schools, and it was just a completely different sport. Nobody made any money. So now you've got this $1 billion enterprise with all that. John Swofford makes $3.5 million, man. $3.5 million. Mike Norvell makes whatever he makes. Willie Taggart makes $16 million not to coach. The spending is out of control. And these players are going to, in their opinion, risk their health, and perhaps even risk their families' health to keep these universities afloat, to make sure the tennis coach gets paid, to make sure there's scholarship for swimmers. They're going to do all this, and what is in it for them? What do they get in return except for another football season that they were going to have anyway? I think there's a recognition now among all these players how much power they have, but don't ask for too much too soon. That would be my only. Don't try to grab it all in one fell swoop, because there's going to be a lot of pushback, and it might not work out for you. But there will be some accommodations, almost assuredly.
This is how negotiations work, though, right? You pretty much ask for what you're not going to be able to get, so you can kind of work down from there, right? Like you didn't come to Gene and be like, yeah, I'll take 1.25. You're like, I want 200 large. You got to shoot for the moon.
No, it wasn't 200 million. It was 2 million. I didn't go crazy. It was a seven-figure signing bonus.
Well, so I guess there's
so I did some math though, Aslan. I did some math.
Well, I'll clear the runway for you. Go.
There you go. So, what would you say is the average complete coaching salary for an ACC football team?
So there's 10 full-time assistants and a head football coach, right?
Right. I put it in the neighborhood of $10 million.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For an ACC, because obviously Notre Dame, I'm sure, is more.
Yeah.
Clemson is more, but Pitt, I don't know what they pay their assistant coaches.
Yeah.
$38,000 and some coupons to Tires Plus or something.
Primanti sandwich,
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, exactly. So I think overall, if you said, including Notre Dame, each college football coaching staff makes $10 million.
Yeah.
That's $150 million in coaches' salaries.
Right.
Add in Swofford. Well, you don't even really have to add in Swofford, but let's add in Swofford. So $153.5 million. If every single person takes a half a pay cut, like salary cut in half, every single assistant coach in the ACC, that's $76 million. And you say, okay, that's going to the players. It's split up evenly among each team. That's about $5 million per team. And you split that up among the players. To me,
did you go further? Did you do $5 million divided by 85?
Yeah, no, it's like $57,000, $58,000 a player.
Okay, it's not even a whole year. It's not even a whole year's of work.
Yeah. But wouldn't that make more sense in the short term than, okay, just give me 50% of all your TV revenue? Because these guys can survive. Mike Norvell, I promise you, can survive on $1.7 million this season.
Mike's taking it on the chin, man. Mike came here on a discount, took a pay cut to help.
Oh, you're right. So he's a bad. Well, still, he can survive.
He can. You're right.
We know he can. Yeah. And the assistant coaches can survive making $350 instead of $700
in Tallahassee, Florida. Absolutely.
If the alternative is these players decide, well, we're not going to play. We're the only big time sport. If you list the major sports in this country, obviously NFL, obviously NBA, Major League Baseball, then college football. Those are the big four. Forget NHL, forget MLS. NHL is not a big four. Those are the big four. There's only one sport where the participants, the ones that have to live in the bubble, that have to make sure, and I know they're not in a bubble, but the ones that have to make sure they don't get sick, and the ones that, again, in their eyes are I've explained why I think it's probably less safe to not be on a football team right now than it is, but still, they're the ones that think they're putting their health at risk, and they're the only ones that don't get a dime from it, but they're saving their athletic departments. Like, their athletic departments might literally crumble if they don't play their sport, and they know that. They do have leverage. So it's going to be interesting, man. Part of me is like, I get it. I understand it. College football desperately needs to change. The way these athletic departments spend is just so stupendously stupid that they need a reckoning. But the other part of me is also like, man, I don't know. Does Jaden Large-Woodby deserve $58,000 to play football this year?
Deion Sanders didn't get paid $58,000
That's exactly right.
to play
Well,
football.
he got paid by the Yankees, but yeah, that's the other part of me. Is like, man, the only reason you're at Florida State, and I'm not picking on Jaden. Literally, put any name in a hat here. I'll even say Tamarian, and he's my guy.
Watch yourself, Corey.
Yeah, I should do that. Let's say Chubba, guy that hadn't even played yet. Does Chubba deserve $58,000 to be a member of the Florida State football team? But Casey Weldon got zip.
Yeah.
Charlie Ward got zip. But again, just because the inequity was real and incredible back then doesn't mean it goes on like that forever. So that was about 10 minutes of me yapping, not even really making a point. And I don't even know what side of the fence I'm on.
Well, I think I've been closer to the traditional side on this topic when you and I would talk about it. I think you've been quite pro player on this, just in terms of it's getting absurd the amount of money the sport generates and where the money's going because it can't go to the players. So it really should be recalibrated to kick some money back to those student athletes. I've been of the belief for a long time. I'm not quite as extreme as Danny Cannell has been about it. I'm like, man, you got a really good life if you play football at Clemson or Ohio State or USC or Alabama. If you wear that Nike warm-up suit in Tuscaloosa, man, like there's a certain status that you have that you can't put money on, and you get your tuition paid for, and you get tutors, and you get fed, and just like there's a lot of cool things that go into to being a scholarship athlete. But then I go on Twitter, man, and I read people that have that sort of traditional belief where, like, let them go ahead, beat it, kids. There's 1,000 other kids out there that'll line up to take your scholarship. Beat it. And I read that over and over for the last 2 days, and I'm like, blow it up. Give the kids all the money. I can't, I'm like, if that's what I sound like, and I don't want to sound like those kind of people, it makes me, like, totally go the whole other part of the pendulum and be like, yeah, man, just blow it up, pay all the players. I do hope they'd find some middle spot on this. Let me ask you this. I don't know if you were trying to interject there. I could feel the venom coming out of you almost. Permeating.
No venom, buddy. No venom at all. It's a good, fun show.
Yeah. So, like, this is very hypothetical, obviously. Maybe rhetorical, maybe more than anything. Like, mechanically, how does this happen then? Because I always used to say, like, when I was in high school, like, you have senior ditch day. It's like, man, if all of us don't come to school today, what are they going to do? Like, if none of us show up, what are they going to do? They can't call all of our parents. They can't suspend all of us. There's always people that end up still going to school. And I used to. Like, there's juniors would hang on to senior skip day and leave. I'm like, man, I'm not a senior. I'm not doing that. I got some ethics. I got morals.
Right.
But, like, not everybody's going to sit out. Even the Pac-12 doing this, it's still, I guarantee you, there's probably going to be a few dozen players on each team that's like, man, like I want to get paid too, but I'm not. It sounds like way too much work. I didn't come to Salt Lake City, Utah to play for the Utes to change the world. I just want my scholarship and I want to go own a car dealership after this, like my dad. What happens here? Because they all have a year where they can all feign fear of the virus and be like, I'm sitting out, because I think every commissioner, or at least the Power 5, has said they'll keep everybody's scholarship intact even if they decide not to play because they have concerns about the health aspect that's floating around right now. So, like, is there a certain percent? Like, if 50% of the people sit out, if, Trevor Lawrence, is there like a LeBron in the NCAA? Like, if he sits out, it's going to really be the sort of change that, or the domino that makes everything fall?
DJ Matthews, maybe?
Okay. DJ, all right.
If he comes out, no, there's nobody like that would make everything crumble. And I don't know, and I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves. This was like just over the weekend, them putting that together in a letter. We don't know if it's going to take hold in the SEC, if it's going to take hold in the ACC. I would not be surprised if it did, though, because there is the college football players have never had more leverage. And again, I'm not arguing for them to do this, but anybody that has any ability to step outside of themselves and what they want can understand the I don't even know. I can't even think of the word for it. The imbalance of watching all these other sports that are simply being played mainly for TV money, and to make sure that there's a season and that commissioners and coaches and players all get their money because they like money, and it's a ton of money. And then there's this one sport where all the administrators make money, hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're in the 99th percentile, almost all of the football coaches in this country, certainly in the Power Five. And then you're playing essentially, quote unquote, I get it, for free. You're playing for scholarship money. Well, guess what, man? Those scholarships aren't keeping the lights on. You know what I mean? Like this football money keeps the lights on, and they know that now. So I would love for them to get what they want. I don't know if asking for going straight to the money is the angle where we want to split the profits 50-50, unless you're okay with many, and that could very well happen. And it's crazy that like college football players are under the same rules as a squash player at Stanford. The same NCAA rules apply to both. It's nuts. Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, it's just bizarre that we're still in that model. So maybe this is what fractures it completely, and college football becomes its own entity. But as it is, most of these athletic department positions, whether we're talking about administrators, coaches, strength staff, nutritionists, whatever, are all dependent on the football money. That's what's become. That's what this sport has become. That's how important it has become. So many lives, including maybe ours, are tied to college football. Mm-hmm. So there is an inequity there that we make money. People make much, much more money than we do associated with college football. But the players don't. They can get, I know they get a free education, they get free food, but they're not getting a piece of the TV money, which is what the real money is. And so I don't know, but I don't know, again, are they cool with Florida State going from 20 varsity sports to 6? Well, I don't know what the impact would be, but it would be a lot.
I think part of the statement or whatever they released also was they wanted like all sports to be protected. So
good luck. How does that work?
Yeah, well,
I mean, yeah, sure we do. I want rainbows and puppy dogs, but
I want universal health care. Yeah,
if you want 50% of the revenue to go just to the players, which is fine, that's tens upon tens of millions of dollars. And what do you think they were spending that money on? So it's spent mainly to support the other athletics in your university. So maybe we'll stop with the huge football mansions. Maybe we'll stop with exorbitant coaches' salaries. I would love for every single college football coach in the Power Five to take a 50% pay cut. And if the players want that money, pull it together through that. So then nobody's actual scholarship from another sport, nobody's job is actually on the line. I don't know that an offensive line coach at Louisville is going to have to, is going to have to quit because he can't afford it on only a $210,000 salary instead of $420,000.
I'll just go sell insurance. I don't need this. I
can't do this. Yeah, I'm not giving away $200,000 to these kids. I think they all would. That would be my. And this, by the way, this is specifically for this year. I'm not. As we move forward into the future, there will be some. This will all come to a head at some point, and maybe this is certainly, I think, the launching point of it. But in the future, there's going to be a way to divvy up this TV money. I do think that. I truly believe that'll happen in our lifetimes, maybe even before Brady gets to school, so he'll get to share in some of that pie. But for this specific year, if these players, if this takes off and it becomes a movement among college football players, you're going to see, I think, these colleges acquiesce. Not, hey, you're getting 50% of the money, absolutely. Because then that would admit, hey, we could have been doing this all along. we've been holding this money from you but they will try to make as many concessions as they can to make sure these college football players are happy because they need them on the field, because they need money. You guys need Warchant. It all adds up. These players have a lot of power.
Is it acquiesce or acquiesce?
I think it's both. It's like potato, tomato.
Hold on, let me have Merriam and Webster figure it out.
Acquiesce.
I always said acquiesce, I think.
Yeah. I'm an acquiesce.
You're an acquiesce guy?
Yeah.
It's probably acquiesce. That sounds better now that I said it.
Hey, last question on this topic. We'll pivot to something else. Then we have an interview. We're continuing this series sort of on the fly. We'll see if we can get to all of it because hopefully they'll be practicing football here soon. But we got another coach from the high school level that coached one of the quarterbacks on the Florida State roster, Rick Butts from Glade Central High School. He coached James Blackman. He's also James Blackman's uncle, godfather, and legal guardian. So spoke to him about James's development. So hang tight for that. How many of these coaches do you think, Corey, like Power 5, I guess we'll just say, we'll limit to that. How many of them do you think, I don't want to say want to, how many of them do you think are receptive and agreeable to paying players? Like a substantial stipend. Like we're talking, they get their finger in on the TV pot. I think it's like below 20%.
Oh, I think it's higher than that, and I think like imagine if you're in that business, and I've thought about this a lot because of what I do for a living. But say you're an OC at a Power 5 school, so let's just say you make $750,000. Lord knows what kind of house, especially in some of these campuses, what some of these towns, what $750,000 a year will get you.
Stillwater, I'll have a sprawling ranch house in Stillwater.
You're living like a king in Stillwater. And then you go to Tulsa to recruit a kid, and you see where he lives and what he deals with on a daily basis, and all the headaches and heartaches that maybe he had to come up and go through. And then he gets to your campus, and you're pulling up in your Mercedes, and you see him either getting in a jalopy or not even walking home or whatever. Hey, it's Stillwater. Maybe he's in a Porsche. We don't know. We know what's his name. Did he die, by the way? Their benefactor.
Red Toombs. Coombs,
no,
Toombs?
What was his name? No, it wasn't that.
T. Boone Pickens.
T. Boone, yeah. Did he pass away?
Yeah, he passed away, yeah.
Well, they still got that T.
R.I.P.
Boone money.
Yeah.
So who knows what those Oklahoma State kids are driving. So maybe that was a bad example. But I've always wondered about that. When you make that kind of money in the two offensive tackles on your team, they came from really bad situations. Maybe one grew up on a ranch with on a trailer park, and another person grew up in inner city Tulsa, and they're playing for you. You go home to your sprawling mansion. They go home to their 3-bedroom apartment. And I always wondered if that bothered guys, if they saw the inequity in that. Or if they think, okay, well, I'm doing a service. I'm really good at my job. I'm giving these guys. I mean, what are the odds an Oklahoma State offensive lineman's going to go make money in football? Certainly not. The odds are very low that he's going to make what you make. So I've always thought that they wouldn't mind. I don't know if they think it's perverse. I think there are some instances where it's definitely perverse, but maybe they think it's a little bit, there's some inequity there, and they'd like the guys to get a cut of it. And maybe, I don't know if anybody says to themselves, well, I could make $650,000 and then I could give $100,000 to these linemen so they could have a better life. They could, I don't know.
I don't know. With that.
Probably not.
I think all these guys coached at some small school as a position coach. And
you know what they did?
$20,000 a year, and they're like, all right, go ahead.
They paid their dues, right? Like all these coaches were in the position of those guys they're coaching.
Yeah.
And so, they probably think, just pick you up by the bootstraps, man, and make yourself a career like I did. I worked for this. I earned this. And I'm not disregarding that. They did. They were all college football players at one point. They all went through it. You're probably right.
I don't even mean that so much as, like, what do you think Jimbo was making at Cincinnati as their offensive coordinator? I mean, obviously he's making 6 figures probably. That's probably a bad example. But some of these guys, literally coach at junior colleges as a position coach, and then they make their way up to maybe being a coordinator. So that I'm sure they look back on that whole thing where, like, part of their journey as being a coach, they don't look back on their playing days. Like Mike Norvell's like, I went to Central Arkansas, and, I had one shirt I could only, that lasted me the whole entire year. I think it's, Adam Fuller, right, was at Holy Cross or, wherever he was at before he ended up getting to Chattanooga. I'm sure was not making a whole heck of a lot of money. And, it was probably like, hey, man, I had a wife and we survived on $20,000 a year. And, now I'm making what does he make, like 900, 800?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I live in Chattanooga, man. I lived in Huntington, West Virginia for 2 freaking years.
Yeah, he paid his dues.
Yeah, so I think that's how it goes.
It's just odd. There's not. It would to me. It's like if this isn't a great example because they make way much more money. But it'd be like if one of the Walton family actually worked in a Walmart was a manager at one of the Walmarts and worked with the people that were making $12 an hour. Meanwhile, they're billionaires.
Yeah, like Succession, when they send the one guy goes through like the management training program or whatever.
Exactly. He's a billion. Yeah, exactly. He's in that training there with people just trying to get a foot in the door, and he flew there in a private jet. Like that to me is like, yeah, if one of the Waltons decided to go just run a Walmart somewhere in Arkansas, it would be. I wonder if it would click with them then. Like, wow, this is crazy. How much more money I make than those people. But hey, that's life.
It is indeed life. All right, we'll be back Wednesday on the podcast. Tuesday doing a live thing. I don't know.
Hey, by the way, prayers up to. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah, I did actually mean to interrupt you. I can't say I didn't. Right. You were talking. I said, you know what? I got something to say, and I just started talking over you. So maybe I'm doing that because I'm not a part of this interview coming up. So I should have told people that. They're not going to even listen now. I am, people. I'm a huge part of it. But prayers up, thoughts for Jonathan Isaac. Looks like he might have torn his ACL again. Torn his ACL. He didn't tear it the first time. He just injured it. And then on Sunday night in the fourth quarter of a 30-point game, my man takes a drive to the basket and looks like he did something very severe to the same left knee that had kept him out for months.
They were up big, weren't they?
They were up by 28. They were up by 28 when it happened. With 9 minutes to go in the game.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, do we need to talk about, what he did before the game the other day? But no, we don't have to talk about it. But that is an extreme bummer for him. Yeah, man. Good vibes. That's what I do. I send good vibes to people. Hope Jonathan's able to bounce back. What was I about to say before you interrupted me? Probably
nothing important. Well, hey, can you look up something else?
Real quick.
This is just what we do.
Here's a Florida State thing. That tight end from UCLA finally showed up to campus as well. So
okay, there you go.
That
Good.
did happen. Jordan Wilson. I wasn't going to say his name, but I did say his name.
J-Dub. J-Dub's here. When is the big hotshot point guard going to announce?
He sets a date. And that date
his
August
name
9th.
August 9th is when he's going to announce?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, he's Jalen Worley's a 6'4" point guard, 5-star. It looks like the people that know this kind of stuff the best all seem to think that he's going to Florida State, which would again be he's like the 23rd ranked player in the country. That would give him 3 top 50 players. He's from Norristown, Pennsylvania. No idea where that is, but it sounds like a hard scrabbled blue collar town. He goes to the Westtown school though, that does not sound all that hard scrabble. But either way, so if Leonard can land that kid, I mean, come on, man. I mean, it's already the number 2 class in the country, or number 1, depending on what website you're looking at. If they nail that kid too, goodness, we don't even need football.
It's outside of Philadelphia, Norristown. Notable people: Steve Bono, Gino Auriemma, Peter Boyle, the dad from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah.
People that at one point called Norristown home.
He was also the dad in Monsters Ball.
Okay.
But he played a much different character than the one in Everybody Loves Raymond.
Mike Piazza.
Not as likable.
Yeah. Mike Piazza as well.
Man, all right, Jalen Worley. Norristown.
Cam Reddish.
Stand up.
It says Cam Reddish was there from there too. So these are Wikipedia things. So, doing it on
all right, so anyway, so that's Jalen Worley will be announced on August 9th, so a week next Sunday. What an odd time to make an announcement. But look, they were supposed to get there's always a few kids that they people think a week or 5 days before an announcement that a school is supposed to get, and people are hearing some things, and that can change in a week. But right now, it certainly seems like all the signs are pointing to Florida State landing this kid, which would be another enormous get.
Kind of like we were supposed to get Julio Jones, right? Everything changed last minute.
Hey, came down to the last minute, man. Last minute. Julio still regrets that decision.
every single day, I bet.
Yeah, exactly right.
I bet. All right, yeah, so we'll be back later on this week, obviously. We'll either do a live show Tuesday on YouTube, come back with a podcast the following day, probably Wednesday, and then we'll do Renegade Express on Thursday for Friday. So that's what we're going to do. But the show's not over yet. Again, also a friendly reminder, I'm going to try to tack it on to the beginning of the show. If you subscribe to this on Podbean, again, transition to something else. We'll be phasing it out. If you're on an Apple or iOS device, the Podcasts app is not a bad one to use. And if you're on an Android or PC, whatever they call it, the Google Podcast app is good. Todd, who listens to the show, says he likes neither. So if you want to tweet maybe at Wake Up Warchant, let us know what you folks use. We can maybe pass it on to Todd. We'll go now to the interview with Rick Butts, quarterback coach down at Glade Central High School.
Finally, an answer to the age-old question, which comes first, the chicken or the egg roll? Easy. Just eat whichever one's closest. The Sensation Salad and Filet Sandwich Meal are back at Zaxby's. Both feature our famous hand-breaded chicken, crispy wontons, Asian slaw, and citrus vinaigrette. And each comes with its very own egg roll for a limited time only at Zaxby's. Try them with fried pickles while supplies last.
Welcome on back to Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's. As promised, we have another interview for you in our series of trying to get to know the quarterbacks on the Florida State roster a little bit better, and who better to speak to than the folks who coached them in high school. Let's talk about James Blackman, his coach, his quarterback coach when he was at Glade Central High School down there in the muck, was Rick Butts. He's joining us here. Rick also James's uncle and godfather. So we do appreciate the time, Coach Butts. How you doing?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Good, man. Good. Feels like we're somewhat closer to football with them releasing this model for the scheduling, so feels like it's getting a little bit more real. So we're real excited about that. This offseason has been crazy, to say the least. I saw a photo, I think, on Twitter a few weeks ago with James spinning the ball and you in the background down there. What is James and what have you guys been trying to get done this offseason in terms of physical work, I guess?
Well, physically, it was pretty tough when the pandemic first started because they sent all the kids home, and where we are from, it's pretty tough to get any physical things done as far as training and weightlifting and all that stuff. So what James was doing was some really backyard type, just running up and down the dike. Which we have here, and just some backyard kind of weightlifting type stuff. But it's really tough because we don't really have the facilities here for him to do anything. And then we have to drive, 30, 45 minutes to get anywhere to do some type of training. And by the pandemic, it was just really rough because when we did get to a facility, they were mostly closed. So it's been kind of rough.
So, how does he go about trying to stay sharp, at least with his arm? I mean, do you make a call to kids at the local high school and see if they want to run routes for a kid who plays quarterback at Florida State, or what sort of stuff you try to get accomplished that way?
Actually, that was one of the because I do work to the school, and that was one of the things that we did have access to was one of the high schools, and when we had some kids to come out and run some routes, just like you said. And we did have access to the weight room a little bit. And like I said, we did have some kids running some routes and doing a couple things for them to kind of keep them, try to keep them as sharp as possible.
James has been blessed with pretty good health, it seems like, in his time at Florida State. He's got a strong arm. We know how hard he works on knowing the playbook and being a good teammate. What's his mindset right now, Coach Butts, would you say, entering, his redshirt junior year, fourth season at Florida State? Like, where is he at? I don't want to say mentally. I don't want to play mental guru kind of stuff. But just what do you think his mindset's at? Where is he at right now in terms of his, level of content or just his readiness for playing ball?
Right now, I think he along with most of probably the rest of the kids are just eager to play football. And with James' mindset, everything that he does is pretty much geared towards something that has something to do with football. But like I said, he's ready. He's ready to play. He's anxious, He's been studying really hard. During the pandemic, they were able to get online and still go over a lot of things and send him his nutrition package. And every day they would have a meeting at 7, and they'll be actually going over plays and going over book work. So they did kind of have that plan laid out really good for him. So he's pretty comfortable. Like I said, he's just ready to get back at it. He's very eager to get back at it, as I'm pretty sure all the kids are.
I'll always remember 17, James kind of getting thrust into duty. I don't know if that was ever part of the plan for him to see the field as a true freshman at Florida State, especially that early week 1 when DeAndre Francois went down. But I just remember kind of the way he battled against NC State, although they fell short. I remember the last drive he put together against Miami to put Florida State ahead, and the poise he kind of showed in Gainesville to beat the Gators, which, not every Florida State quarterback walks into the swamp and beats the Gators. And then what he did in that bowl game, throwing for 4 touchdowns. It felt like when he walked off the field in Shreveport, I don't know if James is going to be a Heisman Trophy winner, but it felt like Florida State had a quarterback that was going to be able to keep the machine running pretty smoothly, get 10 wins and things like that. There's really no easy way to ask it, but I mean, what do you think has happened in the last 2 seasons for James in his development?
It's a very interesting position that he's in. There's only one quarterback on the field at a time for the most part. But I think with James, it's been such it's been such an up and down thing since 2017. I mean, with the coaching changes and the different position coaches and the different schemes and philosophies, it has been really, really difficult for James to even catch hold of what's really going on. I mean, he has a lot of football smarts. He's able to catch up on some things and relate to things, and he's able to put stuff in place. But just the inconsistency of all the different coaches and coaching philosophies and coaching styles, and I mean, it's just been tumultuous. I mean, make no mistake about it, I wouldn't be the one to make an excuse for him at all. I'll be the first one up his butt when he does something wrong. But at the same time, it's just been such a carousel for him mentally until, his inconsistent play has, I believe, just by knowing him, just has been a lot due to the inconsistent coaching and the tumultuous things that he's gone through since being at Florida State.
We're trying to catch up, obviously, with guys that have coached these kids that are quarterback now on the roster at Florida State. You, obviously, you're his uncle, you're his godfather, so it's a little bit different when you're watching him play football. Sometimes during the season tweeted out some stuff, and, the fan base kind of had a little bit of a sour reaction to the way you would kind of process the way that things would happen on Saturday. But these same folks that would say, why is James's, uncle tweeting, leave Willie alone, are the same people that are excited now that Willie Taggart's kind of gone. You can't reason with those people, I guess, but just what was it like for you to watch and see the kind of reaction, and what are the things that people kind of need to realize when they do criticize James and his play in recent memory?
Yeah, with me, I kind of find it's been kind of difficult for me to hold my tongue because I'm really not a hold my tongue type of guy. But for James and on his behalf, I will try to do better than that, and I've done my best just to try to say anything. But
I'm not criticizing you. Listen, I don't have a son, but if my nephew was getting beat up on the internet the way that James does sometimes, I'd probably speak out too, man. So I'm not throwing it.
It's been rough because a lot of times most fans and most people, casual fans, don't really know the game of football, and they just say things, and it's not like just. It's a regular kid, it's a little different for me. And a lot of times when things happen, it's just not like, oh, James threw interception. Oh, he's a horrible passer. A lot of times it's a miscommunication issue or just a issue where everything has to go according to plan in order for things to go according to plan for the most part.
Right.
And it's a really difficult position. And for any kid, the fan base a lot of times can be kind of rough on kids, and I know just by coaching kids for a long time that kids and their parents they look at that stuff, and that sometimes has a weighing ability on where they want to go to school or if they want to continue to even go to that school. Not saying they don't have thick skin, you got to have thick skin, but a lot of times, a lot of that stuff is just really, I think, is kind of out of line.
You mentioned the inconsistencies kind of in coaching. I mean, he's had Jimbo calling plays, Randy Sanders calling plays, Walt Bell called plays the one game he played in, Willie Taggart called plays, Kendall Browse called plays. Feels like we're probably talking about, Tom Brady or something, the amount of coaches he's had. But for you, seeing that, the inconsistencies and such, is he a pro-style quarterback? Is there anything that you think this new staff is bringing that will bring out the best in James? Was it a bad fit, the RPO sort of heavy approach that Willie and Kendall were running? Actually, I shouldn't say wrong, but was that not the best fit maybe for James' sort of skill set?
For the most part, I think it's kind of hard to say a quarterback is a pro-style quarterback but obviously, I mean, he's not Michael Vick, so that's obvious. But I think that the style that they were running or trying to run may not have been the best style suit for him. Not saying that he couldn't do it because of course he will adjust to anything for the most part. But I think the system how he's explaining to me, I haven't seen a lot of it on paper, but how he's explaining to me now with Coach Norvell and his staff and how they're on him and how they're putting things together, I can say he's really, really, really excited to be out there to compete and just try to move forward. From what he's telling me, I mean, he's very, very excited.
How do things work when like a new coach comes to school? I mean, like at the college level, like do parents get phone calls? Like do you all get a text message or an email from the new coach? Or like, do you really never develop any sort of communication with the men that's now hired to kind of groom and lead your children?
Each coach, to be honest with you, each coach has done it a little different. With Coach Fisher, I already kind of knew him prior to James, so I kind of knew him already, and we kind of had a relationship. With Coach Taggart, we talked maybe once or so. But then again, I think as the kids become older, I think the communication mostly goes towards them, and then they'll mostly relate what the coach is saying to their parents. Because, when James first started, he was just fresh, 18 years old. And I want to talk to somebody. I would like to talk to the coach so I can know what's going on. But, James is like, yeah, he's, 21, I think he's 22 now. I'll be 22 in a month or so. So he's getting a little older. He'd be able to handle the situation a little better. But Coach Norvell, I haven't talked to him personally, but he has reached out and he has talked to his mom a couple of times. I just wasn't in place to be able to, to get the call. But he has talked to his mom a couple of times, and they have had communication. And we haven't had any issues with that. But each coach has done it a little different.
We hear from James. He talks about, people ask about, transferring, obviously, in 18 when DeAndre kind of got the job back. But, James talks about, listen, Florida State through and through. You cut me, I bleed garnet and gold. He seems to want it so bad, Rick. Like he wants to be the guy that helps get this thing turned around. Can he find a way to dial that back? Does he need to dial that sort of stuff back?
I think that's where I see some stories sometimes saying, he needs to watch his emotions and all that stuff. All that comes with me personally. That just comes with him. Sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's bad. So, like you said, maybe the negative stuff can dial back, but it's hard to say that when you're as a football player. It's very hard to restrain yourself if you're just in that moment. Some people can do it easier than others, but he's a very emotional guy, and it can go good or sometimes it can go bad. But at the end of the day, like you said, he wants it so bad, and he expects everyone to be on the same level that he is, emotionally, physically, and everything else. But I think that this year, how he is describing to me the coaching staff and how they react in their preparation, I think this will be a totally different year. Even though we're going into this, strange situation with the all-conference schedule and all that stuff, but the way that he's describing it to me, how he's being coached, and he's showing me his notes, and he's taking his notes, and he's very excited. I think this will be the year. I think this will be a great year for all Seminole fans.
So there's that sign that hangs above the practice field that they run on every day. And, it used to say on the arch that, you either get better or you get worse. You never stay the same. What are some of the things that you feel that just because, a player gets a year older doesn't necessarily mean they're going to grow and get better. But what are some of the things that you believe are going to lead to James being better this year and this time around?
Just because he's matured some physically and mentally. And like I said, if he has some consistent coaching and somebody on his butt when he makes a mistake, like Coach Norvell and his staff are, I can see him, if it's a consistent background behind him, I can see him getting consistently better.
If you could only invite one person to a barbecue, would it be Jimbo or Willie?
Oh, man.
Do you have any good Willie stories for us? I mean, I'll tell you, the one thing that we get asked more than anything on the podcast, they want us to, tell folks, everyone wants to know, what we really think about Willie or, what things are really going on with. And I think we've shared a lot of it, I feel like. But, I mean, from your perspective, is there anything that kind of stands out to you from the time that, the last 2 seasons with James being here in Tallahassee?
Well, I'll just say this. It'll be the difference between I believe that with Coach Fisher and the last coaching staff that we had was coaching. I mean, I just plain and simple. I think it was just coaching. And Jimbo was a real hard ass, and he was really on James, and he was really consistent, and he knew exactly what he was doing and what it took to make it happen. Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. I think that kind of what you don't say says more, I guess, than what you do say. So we'll find out now. We'll find out soon enough how this all kind of comes together. So you haven't spoke to Coach Norvell, you said, but from what you've heard from James, it's been pretty overwhelmingly positive.
It's been all positive, actually. Like I said, he needs someone to stay on him. Like I said, as long as it's consistent, if it's consistent, James will do it. You guys are going to see a continuation of what James was supposed to be after 2017. That's the way that if you watch his film, which I constantly do, from that Alabama game, which he only played 3 or 4 snaps, to the end of the season, as you can see his growth from there, I think this will be a continuation of his growth moving forward. We have to skip a couple of years, and then there'll be a continuation.
The long route, but as long as we get to the place, that's all that really matters. As long as we get to the destination, that's all that matters.
Most definitely.
Rick Butts, quarterback coach down at Glade Central High School, joining us here on Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's. Thanks a lot for the time, Rick. We'll be watching intently and hoping for the best for the Noles.
All right, go Noles.
Warchant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. Warchant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WARCHANT30. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.